Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. I need to do something here. Oops, that's as far as it goes. And let's just kind of go through this as fast as possible. I might do a couple of videos today, but mid-season list, as I've mentioned the last few years, my blog season for albums of the year starts in November 1st, and ends, October 31st or Halloween the next year. So that means we're at halfway point now for 2016, 2017. So, and I wrote a blog entry in the last 5 or 6 days with the whole list, which I will go over, but not entirely in detail, at least if I'll even go over the whole thing. So, let me start just going over showing some albums. One album that I've got that I ultimately don't know if I'm going to keep, because I just haven't had the time to even go back to it, is the Klimp 1918 album, Sentimental Jugen, a band from Italy. This is very noise influence, and German, Berlin. The title is almost German. It was a long time in making. First album in like 8 years from this band. Sort of, they were in the post-rock kind of, progressive college rock vein, similar to Dredg at the time. But this new record they've been working on the last so many years, 7, 8 years. This deluxe edition, Sentimental and Jugen. Unfortunately, I would be more in love with if I spent more time with and be talking about. So that's about it. I'm just gonna show that, just go through my list of albums. That's sort of at the bottom, but let's just see here quickly as possible. Thundercat, Drunk. A lot of hype about this guy who worked with Kimbra among other people, and there's 2 songs, one with Kenny Loggins, one with Michael McDonald, or maybe one with both. That's the biggest appeal on it, but I haven't listened to it a lot to know if I feel any more about it, any better about it, but those 2 songs specifically at least give a little bit of credibility. I guess the guy's influenced by soul music to prog to electronic or EDM and whatever, but he's a producer as well as being a musician, a songwriter himself. So Radical Fates put out a cool EP. It's slightly different, but like a little more piano, but it's still interesting, called Sun, Moon, Eclipse. One word with a couple double letters. But if you like Radical Face, definitely check that out if you didn't know about that. Black Map, Mark Engels of Dredg, sort of, it's not metal exactly, but it's more like straight hard rock. Release, their second release, called In Droves. I like a lot of it. It sounds a fair amount like Tool at times, from both a vocal standpoint and some of the production, but there's still kind of the classic kind of Mark Engels guitar tone that I love from obviously his work with Dredg. So that's the biggest appeal, and the songwriting is pretty good, but being that I'm sort of on the fence about Tool anyways, I guess I haven't been attached to it, but I should go back to it. Going back to November, Zonky from Umphrey's McGee, which is a mostly live, if not entirely live, all mashup type of thing. Fun little album to listen to all these different cover songs mixed and matched. I'm not going to go over all the individuals, but it's interesting, especially if you like Umphrey's McGee or like classic rock or prog classic rock in like 90s, and like they mix in some, I think, rap and some other things. Anyway, I think Radiohead's in there, Beck's in there. But then there's like stuff from a lot of like classic stuff, because Umphrey's McGee were influenced by a lot of classic rock. Let's see here. And Michael Jackson, I think, might be referenced. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Wakhtar and Zoe, which is Paul Wakhtar, for his last... Wakhtar's his name, it's like hyphenated, who's now in the defunct band Aha, working with Zoe, who is Zoe Necco of... who's the daughter of Jimmy Necco of Ours, who has an album coming out later this year. Album's called World of Trouble, a debut album. It sounds a lot like Lana Del Rey at points, but I only listened to it like twice, so I gotta probably revisit it a little bit. I liked, she sang on a couple Ours songs, at least one, and the stuff I've heard, I like her voice, but the songwriting had a little bit, almost too much of the whole Lana Del Rey thing for me to love it, but I'm probably not certain on how much I enjoy that record yet. Anyway, going up the ladder, it's the Barnum Reserve, number 14, When All Is Lost, the second album in like 3 years from them, and it's slightly different than their debut album, but in some ways it's better or more interesting because they mix up the styles at points. Although the vocalist does tend to have a sameness to his style. He's a distinct style of singer. I don't know any other singer who sounds like him, even though he doesn't really, it's not screaming exactly, but So, but I need to listen to it a little more. It just came out a couple weeks ago, and but there's a couple tracks that caught my ear, and I'm like, oh, this is a little different than the first album, and but I guess if you listen to like whatever it is, 10 or 11 tracks, you might kind of get the sense that a lot of the songs sound similar. But they wrote it around the same time as the first album, and then they have another album that's expected maybe another year or two. So I don't know if there's the sound on all three of these albums are going to have a lot of the same elements to it, but they're a band from England, the Barnum Reserve. They use trumpet, and I wouldn't call them hard rock, but they're heavier rock. They're rock. They're definitely not metal exactly. They're not prog exactly. They're not chamber rock, more specifically like the chamber bands, but they use some chamber instrumentation. They're a unique band in that sense, but I guess it depends on if the vocals do enough for you. That's the biggest thing about the Barnum Reserve. Rachel Flowers' Listen album came out in November, debut album. A lot of it's influenced by Keith Emerson and ELP, of course, and Miles Davis, and a lot of jazz fusion, but it's a very fun, great musicianship, fun record. Certainly, I think this will be, I have it number 13 right now. It will be in my top 20 or 30 records for sure, because I like it. I've gone back to it a few times. She's sort of a protege, savant of sorts, who can play piano and play like Replicated and that kind of stuff, classically trained and everything, but she has a certain, gift. Anyway, called Listen. Moonloop, somewhat extreme metal band called Devotion, their album Devotion. I enjoy a lot of it. I've only listened to it a couple times because it's not short, but as far as the extreme metal albums that have come out this year, it's definitely up there. Progressive, called progressive extreme metal. It was like literally 3 weeks ago the last time I listened to it, so I can't say a ton about it. Going up, number 11, Blackfield 5, or V. It's good that Steven Wilson's doing more of the work with this record rather than Aviv kind of just doing almost all of it the last two records previously, but I guess I was really excited about it first. Now I'm sort of just lukewarm about it. It's not bad, but again, it's not... I still prefer the first two Blackfield albums over it. It's got the one just really sad song that I guess it was written and recorded previously by Aviv on a solo record. I'm forgetting the name of it. I mean, there's that song about Family Man, which talks about your rescue team is miles away or whatever. What's the one? No, not lately. October. If you take out one specific track that stands out, it is October. And it was a song that I guess Aviv wrote and recorded previously a few years ago, but with Steven Wilson doing more of the work on it, doing his take on it, I think it ends up being even greater. And Aviv even mentioned that in an interview. It's one of a lot of Steven Wilson fans and Porcupine Tree fans will probably consider it one of the best songs Steven's ever done or been involved with, which I can't deny. It's melancholy as hell. So, all right, number 10, Tuxedo 2, the second Tuxedo album. Good record. I think it's actually a little better than the first album, perhaps. Very fun, energetic, party vibe to a lot of the songs. Fucks with the Tux, of course, is the first single they had on it. But what's the song that I love so much on this? I mean, of course, it's the Weiss, the Mayer Hawthorne, Tuxedo being Mayer Hawthorne and Jake One. It's a side project. One of Mayer Hawthorne's number of his collaborations he's done. What's the one I really love on this? Back in Town is good. Yeah, I think it is Back in Town. Back in Town is my favorite track on this record, and but a lot of the songs have a similar element to them. Not all of them, but it just has a very good energy flow. I mean, for a band like Tuxedo who does sort of electronic, it's not EDM, but it's sort of, it's poppy dance music with a lot of synthesizers and stuff, and then they use trumpets, which I also like. I don't know if they're synthesized or not, but there's horn parts in a lot of the songs which add a little bit of flair, and they harmonize well with it. So yeah, if you like the first Tuxedo album, you'll probably like this one more. I would just guessing. You'd want to hear it if you haven't heard it yet. So I'm seeing Tuxedo next month actually for the first time. Number 9, The Family Crest put out a new EP a couple weeks ago called Prelude to War. Love The Family Crest chamber band. They have, it's like 5 songs on it, and it's really the first part, I believe, of a bigger, the war series or war project they're doing. But I like every song on this EP. One song, maybe not as much as the others. I think it's the ballad, which I think the ending is pretty good, but the first part of it kind of starts out slow. And Liam, I love him. He's high in the mic, unfortunately, and I had to turn the volume down when I've listened to it. But let's see here. There's one song that the single, the first two singles, Sparks and Mirror Love. Mirror Love is they're saying that has like this Bee Gees element, which it kind of does. But those two are the best. But Don't Wake Me and Can't You Stay is I think the one that has the ballad, and Battle Cry. Yeah, it's a good EP. Looking forward to what they do next because I believe they've been working on this for a few years. This is just a taste of what they're going to do soon. Ulver, The Assassination of Julius Caesar. This kind of came out of nowhere. The last Ulver album last year pretty much bored me. A lot of percussion. It went on for like 70 or 80 minutes. Tribal kind of stuff. It was good for like 20 minutes, and I was just kind of like, this is not going to bear repeated play. This album, completely different, which is not unusual for Ulver. And I like Ulver. I'm not a huge Ulver fan, but they're very what's the chameleon like? They're very schizophrenic almost in some ways. They've changed styles so many times. Although I guess they kind of have an overall aesthetic of being very artsy with all their music. The Blood Inside, I think, is one of the albums I've enjoyed. The ones that's kind of when they left the black metal stuff. I've posted some of their albums in the year calendars that are the black metal. But I think once they started doing more stuff like Peter Gabriel, I was like, oh, this is interesting. So, but I haven't really been attached to any of their albums the last 5, 6, 7 years, especially really since I discovered them, like in the late 2000s. But this album is very catchy at points, and it does have an 80s vibe to it. So in comparison to like Depeche Mode, I guess I understand that to a point. But I think they also brought back some of the Peter Gabriel influenced stuff. And I get to listen to it more. I've listened to it like 3 times, and every time I've enjoyed it more. I just need to like discipline myself. This could be higher. That could be a top 5 album if I end up getting addicted to it so much. Anyway, moving on. Big Wreck, the follow-up to the last record, which I'm forgetting the name of, but it's called Grey Street. More of the same, and I put it this high just because there's like 5 or 6 singles they put out before the album came out that were all very catchy. They had their moments. It's similar to the last record in that there's like 15 songs, but more than half of them I enjoy, so I'm going to want to go back to it. So, great to see them sort of return to form after, being gone for a long time. They were gone for like 10 years, and now they're back making albums this decade. Persephone, the extreme metal band they're not from Italy, but from I forget the nation in that part of Europe. Athma. Again, based on time, I haven't been able to listen to it tons, but I would put this maybe a notch above the Moon Loop album for best like extreme metal album. But Persephone, they do this kind of progressive metal with extreme metal, very epic, at times symphonic, and a little bit like Vector in that sense too. Their songs definitely segue and crescendo. There's a lot of great crescendos in them. This album is no different. I think I want to kind of give it a little bit of space and see where it kind of lands toward the end of the year. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the top 3 or 4 extreme metal albums, and it should be in the top 20, if not in the top 10 by the end of the year. I don't know if I'll actually. It's going to be a contender for the top 5, but I'm really happy to get another Persephone album. Persefone. All right, so the top 5, the Reign of Kindo. The Reign of Kindo is not put on an album, but they put out 5 singles or 4 singles since the deadline, but 5 singles in this batch from Patreon. All of them are awesome. The last one they just put out, About Love, is this ballad that's just mesmerizing, and it's just surreal. I love it. I love the way it builds. Smell of a Rose, 1 in a Million, Human Convention, and City of Gods. City of Gods and Human Convention use a lot of horns, and they're proggiest thing maybe the Reign of Kindo's ever done. So we're still waiting on whatever the official release, but just based on music I've listened to this year, they have to be somewhere in there because I've been going back to those songs a lot. So, all right, so I can finally show this. Number 4, the Mew album Visuals, which this is the vinyl copy, and I'm liking this a lot. Maybe I should do a separate video. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to actually show them, but I'll do a video hopefully about Mew. On this, talking more about this album. It's a very good album, but then again, I like every Mew album. I don't know if I consider it as good as like the 3 albums that I consider something that are best at this point. Frangers and the Glass-Handed Kites and No More Stories, but this is a follow-up to Plus Minus from 2015, and it's similar to Plus Minus, but also different. This particular version, I don't know if it's limited, it comes with these 3D glasses, which since I just opened it, I haven't actually tried it, but this gatefold It's kind of, as I wrote on the blog and some message boards, kind of greater than the sum of its parts. I mean, the first single, "Carry Me to Safety," which is the last song, is nice. Although for closers for Mew, it's probably not as good as some of their closers, but it's still a good closer. Zanzibar, Twist Quest is sort of jazzy. They used the sax player that played with Jazz Kamikaze, which I've always thought of them with Mew. Candy Pieces All Smeared Out has this weird, kind of heavy, dark riff at the beginning that almost sounds metallic. But Nothingness and No Regrets, The Wake of Your Life, it's kind of less is more because it's only about a 40-minute album. It's a little shorter than Plus Minus even, but a thumbs up on this. And again, if I get the chance to do a Mew series, I need to do. I will, but if you're a Mew fan and if you even like Plus Minus, check it out. This is actually in some ways I think getting better response in some way because people didn't like Plus Minus at some point. And I think they came around on it, but so that's number 4. Number 3, as I've talked about before, I think I did a review. Did I not? I just did a special. The 22 album. By the way, did I say the name of this? Visuals. I forget. 22 album You Are Creating, Limb 1. Which, like the Mew album, it's kind of like less is more in some respects. But it's like a 35-minute album or whatever. This is it's a fun record. It's production-wise, it's a step up from their first album from 2010. I'm blanking on the title right now. I should know this. Flux. But a lot of great energy, some twists like we like from 22, some vocal harmonies. They did a lot of like 3 or 4 part harmonies like in the studio and stuff, and I'm glad they didn't change singers because at one point they did have a different singer after the original singer left, but he came back. So that's number 3. Number 2, Pain of Salvation, In the Passing Light of Day. The sort of return to form, and I haven't done a review on this album specifically, but I've talked about Pain of Salvation. I talked about it when I bought this album like that, like the 22 record. A lot of people saying the title track's the best song, and On a Tuesday's great. Meaningless, the single. Unfortunately with Pain of Salvation, they did some touring, and then things have kind of unraveled a bit. But now we got Johan Hallgren back in the band. But as far as albums for 2017, and their catalog, this is definitely a comeback. I prefer it over the Road Salt albums. At least I haven't listened to those albums in many years. But great to see them. And then number 1. And again, I would say that number 2, Pain of Salvation, number 3, 22, it's kind of a mismatch. I could put any of these records number 1 there. I haven't found that, unbelievable staple record yet, but Anecdota's debut album, which came out in November, Overloading. Great piano, sort of jazzy prog rock, kind of similar to the Reign of Kindo. It had a couple of the singles that were videos they had previously released. If I can actually remember the names or just find them on the CD here. There's Rayleigh Band that's... Project RNL, one of the members of Project RNL. One More Day, and what's the other one that's Late? But it's an epic. It's a little bit like the Woods Brothers album from last year. When piano is done well and tastefully, I love it when it works with progressive rock. And the vocals are sort of Gentle Giant-like, so the progressive rock community, people that like the old school stuff, love Gentle Giant, or your Spock, Spirit, or Echo Lynn. This would appeal to if they haven't heard it. But that's the spiel on mid-season. I'm going to stop this because this video's gone long, and maybe I'll do a preview of the rest of the year. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe.